Elise Washington stood at gate 37B, her boarding pass extended, her face a mask of calm. The flight attendant's eyes narrowed, her tone sharp enough to cut.
"Ma'am, I need to see that again."
She barely glanced at the ticket before waving Elise aside.
"Your boarding pass isn't confirmed. Step out of line. Others need to board." Elise, a black woman in a tailored blazer, didn't flinch.
She'd faced worse than this. As the CEO of Nexus Technologies, she'd built an empire from nothing, but here, at LaGuardia's Terminal B, she was just another face to be questioned. She handed over the boarding pass again.
"I'm in seat 2A. There's no mistake."
The attendant, Meredith, scoffed, her name tag glinting under the fluorescent lights. She muttered something into a phone, her gaze flicking to Elise with suspicion.
Passengers shuffled past, some staring, others pretending not to notice.
A security guard approached, his hand clamping onto Elise's arm before she could speak. "Ma'am, you need to come with me," he said, his grip tightening as he pulled her away from the gate. Elise's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady.
"I'm a first-class passenger. This is my flight." The guard didn't listen.
His fingers dug into her jacket, dragging her toward a customer service desk. Whispers rippled through the crowd.
A few passengers nodded approval, others looked uneasy, but no one spoke up. Then, chaos erupted. The massive departure screens flickered and went black. Electronic gates froze. The PA system cut off mid-sentence, leaving an eerie silence. Passengers stopped in their tracks, confused.
Airline staff stared at blank terminals, their faces pale. Gate 37B became a storm of shouting, scattered luggage, and frantic staff trying to restore order.
This wasn't a delay.
Something bigger was unfolding. Elise's phone buzzed in her pocket, but the guard's grip tightened. "Let go," she said, her voice low but firm. He hesitated, glancing at the chaos around them.
In that moment, Elise knew this wasn't just about a boarding pass.
It was about who she was and who they thought she wasn't. And she was about to make them regret it. She'd come from nothing, raised by a mother who worked 3 jobs in a neighborhood where dreams rarely survived. At 16, while others partied, Elise taught herself to code on a salvaged computer. By 17, she was fixing electronics to help pay rent. College was a battle, perfect SATs, yet waitlisted by every top tech school. At her first job, her ideas were stolen, her promotions blocked. But Elise didn't break. She built. At 28, she mortgaged everything to start Nexus Technologies. Now, 15 years later, her company employed thousands and earned billions. She was a force, and she was done being dismissed. That morning, Elise had been preparing for the biggest deal of her career. The Global Tech Innovation Summit in Singapore wasn't just a conference, it was where she'd secure a $500 million investment to fund Nexus's boldest project yet. She'd chosen to fly alone, no entourage, just her carry-on and a mind sharp enough to reshape industries. Her simple outfit, black trousers, silk blouse, tailored blazer, hid the power she carried. But as she'd entered the terminal, trouble had already begun. At the premium check-in, an agent had pointed her to the economy line. "That way, ma'am," he'd said, barely looking at her first-class ticket. She'd stayed calm, checked in, and moved to security. There, a TSA agent waved her out of the premium lane for a random check. She watched white businessmen breeze through while every person in the enhanced screening line was a person of color. The pat-down was invasive, the agent's hands lingering too long. Then her $60,000 Patek Philippe watch, her gift to herself when Nexus went public, vanished. She'd fought to get it back, wasting precious minutes. Now, at the gate, the humiliation continued. Meredith handed Elise's boarding pass to a supervisor, Richard Bronson, whose scowl seemed permanent. "Is there a problem?" he asked, ignoring Elise. Meredith smirked. "She says she's first class." Richard eyed Elise up and down. "Ma'am, first-class tickets are expensive. We need to verify your booking." Elise's jaw tightened. "What irregularity?" she asked, her voice steady. Richard demanded her passport, credit card, even a company authorization, documents no other passenger was asked for.
"Step aside," he said. "We're boarding the flight."
She was escorted to a desk, told it would take a few minutes.
Minutes became an hour.
From her seat, she watched her flight board, the jet bridge door closing.
She overheard staff laughing nearby. "Thinks she's first class," one said. "Bet she's never flown before."
The word stung, but what hurt more was watching her plane taxi away without her. Richard returned, his tone smug.
"Your flight's gone. We can rebook you in economy on the next one in 5 hours."
Elise stood, her eyes locked on his.
"Show me the booking system. I want to see the first-class manifest."
Richard hesitated, then turned the monitor.
3 first-class seats were open.
"You're lying," she said.
"Those seats are available."
His face reddened. "They're blocked for operational reasons."
Elise leaned in. "Discriminatory reasons."
The crowd stirred, some filming, sensing tension. Richard signaled security again. The same guard grabbed her arm, yanking her toward the exit. Her phone and papers scattered across the floor. As she bent to retrieve them, she saw him, Bradley Winters, Skyglobe's CEO, watching with a satisfied smirk. "Some people don't know their place," he muttered to a colleague.
Elise's phone rang again, a custom tone she couldn't ignore. She straightened, shaking off the guard.
"I need to take this," she said, her voice steel. The call was from Marcus Chan, her chief strategy officer.
"Elise, the Singapore fund needs our decision on the airline contract by tomorrow."
She froze.
Nexus wasn't just a passenger.
They were evaluating Skyglobe for a $3.7 billion corporate travel contract.
This flight was their final test, a test they just failed.
"Remove Skyglobe from consideration," she said, her eyes on Bradley.
"Recommend Singapore Airlines." Marcus's voice tightened. "There's more.
The market's nervous about our Skyglobe stock. Rumors were divesting."
Elise's mind raced.
Through her investment firm, she controlled 28% of Skyglobe's shares, the largest block. One move, and she could tank their valuation. "Call an emergency board meeting," she said.
"Cite discriminatory practices. And Marcus execute Plan Delta."
She hung up, her plan forming.
Bradley Winters thought he'd won. He had no idea who he was dealing with.
Elise Washington stood firm as the security guard's grip loosened, his radio crackling with no clear orders. The terminal buzzed with chaos, passengers shouting, staff scrambling, screens still dark. Her phone call with Marcus had set Plan Delta in motion, a strategy she'd crafted years ago for moments like this, when discrimination threatened not just her dignity but her empire. She made 3 more calls, 30 seconds each, to her CFO, legal counsel, and PR team. Each word was precise, each order a step toward justice. Bradley Winters, Skyglobe's CEO, was still across the terminal, his face twisted in anger as he spoke to an airport police officer.
"She's disruptive," he barked, pointing at Elise.
"Get her out of here." His voice carried, drawing more eyes. A few passengers nodded, emboldened.
"She's holding everyone up," a man in a golf shirt shouted. Another, red-faced, spat, "Go fly with your own kind."
The words landed like a slap, but Elise didn't flinch. She'd heard worse.
Then, a shift.
Officer James Taylor approached, his eyes widening.
"Miss Washington? Elise Washington from Nexus Technologies?" He lowered his voice. "My daughter did her school report on you. She wants to be a coder because of you."
His tone was respectful, a stark contrast to the hostility around her. He stepped subtly between Elise and the growing crowd, his presence a quiet shield. The terminal screens flickered back on, but not with flight updates.
CNN Airport Network flashed breaking news: Skyglobe Airlines shares plummet amid rumors of major shareholder sell-off.
Passengers gasped, pulling out phones to check stocks.
Whispers spread.
Bradley's phone rang repeatedly, his confident swagger crumbling as he stepped away to answer. His face paled with each call, his eyes darting to Elise with dawning fear.
She wasn't just a passenger.
Through Horizon Capital, her investment firm, Elise controlled 28% of Sky Globe's stock, more than the Winters family.
She could cripple the airline with a single move. And that wasn't all.
The Singapore conference she was heading to wasn't just about a $500 million deal. It was where she'd finalize Nexus's acquisition of Aerosphere Airways, Sky Globe's biggest rival in Asia.
Her keynote would reshape the industry.
Bradley had no idea the woman he'd dismissed held his company's fate in her hands.
A commotion at the terminal entrance broke the tension. Samantha Rivera, Elise's executive assistant, strode in, her heels clicking with purpose.
Behind her, four members of Nexus's legal team carried leather portfolios, their faces unyielding. Samantha spotted Elise and moved straight to her, ignoring the security guards. "The documents you requested," she said, handing over a slim portfolio.
"Board members are assembling in 30 minutes.
Elise opened the folder, scanning printouts of Sky Globe's non-discrimination policies they'd blatantly ignored.
She nodded. "Let's go."
With her team flanking her, she walked back toward Gate 37B, the epicenter of her humiliation. Officer Taylor made no move to stop her.
The guards exchanged uneasy glances, their radios silent as Sky Globe's chain of command unraveled.
The PA system crackled. "Attention, all Sky Globe flights are temporarily grounded due to an administrative action.
Please stand by." The announcement repeated in multiple languages, each word fueling the chaos. Passengers swarmed customer service desks, demanding answers.
Staff, overwhelmed, pointed fingers.
Meredith, the gate agent, shouted, if she hadn't disrupted boarding, this wouldn't be happening. Richard, the supervisor, chimed in. She couldn't follow instructions.
The crowd turned on Elise, their anger misdirected. "She's why our flights are cancelled," a woman yelled.
"One person's ruining everything," a man added.
Elise's legal team closed ranks around her, but she stepped forward, undeterred. She climbed onto a chair, her presence commanding silence. "My name is Elise Washington," she began, her voice steady and clear.
"I'm the CEO of Nexus Technologies and founder of Horizon Capital."
The crowd stilled.
Phones came out, some searching her name, others recording. Eyes widened as Google confirmed her identity.
"I came here as a first-class passenger with a valid ticket," she continued. "I was denied boarding not for anything I did, but for what I look like.
This isn't new. It happens to people like me every day.
But today, it happened to someone who can demand accountability." Bradley pushed through the crowd, his face a forced mask of calm. "Miss Washington," he said, loud enough for the cameras now arriving from local news stations.
"There's been a misunderstanding. On behalf of Sky Globe, I apologize for any inconvenience."
His smile was thin, his eyes desperate. Elise looked down at him, her gaze unflinching.
"This isn't inconvenience, Mr. Winters. It's systemic discrimination you've fostered."
She took a tablet from Samantha, pulling up a report. "For 6 months, my team has documented discriminatory incidents on your airline. Mystery shoppers, different races, religions, backgrounds, identical tickets showed clear disparities in treatment. These aren't just wrong. They're legally actionable." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Bradley's face drained of color. Camera crews pushed closer, capturing his panic. "Miss Washington," he tried, his voice low, "let's discuss this privately. I'll offer our corporate jet to Singapore in compensation."
Elise didn't waver. "Today wasn't an accident, Mr. Winters.
It's the result of a culture you built, one that dismisses diversity as a stunt, that says some people don't know their place." She quoted his earlier words, and his eyes widened. "I heard everything. And I've been listening to your passengers, your employees, the communities you claim to serve." A black woman stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I've flown Sky Globe for 15 years. Every time, I'm randomly screened."
An elderly Asian man spoke next. "They made me switch seats because a white passenger didn't want me next to them."
One by one, passengers shared stories of bias, their voices building a damning case. Elise listened, giving space to their pain.
Bradley's composure cracked.
"This is a private matter," he snapped at the media, but Officer Taylor stepped forward.
"This is a public terminal, sir. They have every right to be here."
The cameras turned, catching Bradley's frustration. Elise addressed the crowd again, her words now streaming live to thousands online.
"Discrimination isn't just wrong, it's bad business.
Sky Globe's lost market share for 8 quarters because it refuses to change.
Today's consumers demand better."
She turned to Bradley. "I was evaluating your airline for a $3.7 billion corporate contract.
I was also considering acquiring Sky Globe for Nexus's transportation division.
But based on what I've seen, I can't recommend or acquire a company with your culture."
Bradley swayed, the weight of her words hitting like a physical blow. The contract and acquisition were his airline's lifeline, gone in an instant.
Social media exploded with #SkyGlobeReckoning, Elise's speech trending worldwide. Passengers who jeered her now shifted uncomfortably, some slipping away as their earlier racist comments, recorded by others, spread online.
3 Sky Globe board members arrived, their faces grim. "Miss Washington," the lead director said, "we take this seriously. We'd like to convene an emergency board meeting now." Elise nodded.
"That's what I called for an hour ago." They moved to a private lounge, cleared for the meeting.
Bradley trailed behind, his earlier arrogance replaced by defeat. The stage was set for a showdown that would shake the airline industry to its core. The premium lounge at LaGuardia's Terminal B was a stark contrast to the chaos outside.
Cleared of passengers, its plush chairs and muted lighting felt like a battlefield dressed in luxury. Elise Washington stood at the head of the room, her legal team at her side, as Sky Globe's board members assembled. Some sat at the polished table, others appeared on large screens via video conference, their faces etched with worry. Bradley Winters, still shaken, slumped in a corner chair, his tie loosened, his confidence shattered.
Elise opened her portfolio, her movements deliberate.
"What happened today at Gate 37B wasn't an isolated incident," she began, her voice steady, cutting through the tension. "It's the result of a culture rooted in discrimination, one that's cost Sky Globe trust, revenue, and now its future." She nodded to Samantha, who distributed copies of a report to the board. The pages detailed months of evidence, emails, passenger testimonies, and data from Nexus's mystery shoppers exposing systemic bias. The board chairman, a silver-haired man named Edward Klein, leaned forward.
"Miss Washington, these are serious allegations. Can you substantiate them?"
Elise met his gaze.
"Every word is backed by evidence."
"Your own emails show Bradley dismissing diversity concerns as PR nonsense. Your data shows passengers of color are flagged for random checks at triple the rate of white passengers. Your former employees report directives to prioritize preferred clients, code for white and wealthy." Bradley shifted, his voice hoarse.
"That's taken out of context."
"I never," Elise cut him off, sliding a printed email across the table.
"This is from you, Mr. Winters, to your COO last year. Focus on our core demographic.
Diversity quotas are a distraction."
Context enough?"
The room fell silent.
Board members exchanged uneasy glances, some flipping through the report, others staring at Bradley.
Samantha tapped her tablet, projecting charts onto a screen. "Sky Globe's lost 3 major corporate accounts in the past year," Elise continued.
"Each cited discriminatory practices as their reason for leaving. Your market shares dropped 8 quarters in a row.
Today, I was evaluating your airline for a $3.7 billion contract.
You failed. And I can't consider acquiring a company with this culture."
A board member on the video feed, a woman with sharp eyes, spoke up. "Miss Washington, you own 28% of our stock.
What are your intentions?" Elise's lips tightened.
"I called this meeting to address shareholder concerns, namely, your discriminatory practices and the liability they create."
"My intentions depend on your response." Outside, the terminal was a storm.
Passengers crowded desks, demanding refunds. Social media buzzed with #SkyGlobeReckoning, Elise's speech at Gate 37B now viewed by millions.
Clips of Bradley's "don't know their place" comment and the passengers' racist jeers went viral, fueling outrage.
News crews camped at the terminal, broadcasting live.
The stock ticker on CNN showed Sky Globe's shares in freefall, down 15% in hours. Inside, the meeting grew heated.
A younger board member, visibly rattled, turned to Bradley.
"Did you know she was evaluating us? Did you know who she was?" Bradley's face reddened.
"She was just a passenger."
"How was I supposed to know?" Elise raised an eyebrow. "You didn't ask. You assumed. That's the problem."
She turned to the board. "For 6 months, my team documented incidents across your flights and facilities.
Black passengers rerouted to economy despite first-class tickets. Muslim women asked to remove headscarves for security.
Latino families separated at boarding for weight distribution.
These aren't accidents. They're patterns, enabled by leadership."
Edward Klein rubbed his temples.
"What do you propose?"
Elise's voice was firm. "Suspend Bradley Winters immediately.
Appoint an interim CEO from outside your current team. Form an independent committee to investigate and reform your practices.
And share my team's evidence with them."
"This isn't negotiable."
Bradley surged to his feet, his voice cracking.
"You can't do this. My family built this airline. I've given my life to it."
He clutched his chest, his face flushing an alarming red. I can't," he collapsed into his chair, gasping. The room froze.
Elise acted first.
"Call an ambulance," she ordered, moving to Bradley's side. She loosened his tie further, easing him to the floor.
"Stay calm. Help's coming." Her calm authority steadied the panic.
A board member dialed 911, while Samantha coordinated with airport staff.
Paramedics arrived within minutes, assessing Bradley.
"Severe stress reaction, possible panic attack," one said, prepping him for transport. As they wheeled him out, Bradley looked at Elise, his eyes wide with something like shock. She'd saved him, despite everything. The board members watched, their expressions a mix of guilt and awe.
Elise returned to the table, unfazed. "Let's continue." With Bradley gone, the board's resistance crumbled.
Klein cleared his throat. "We'll suspend Mr. Winters pending investigation.
We'll appoint an interim CEO and form the committee. We'd like your team's documentation to guide our reforms." Elise nodded. "You'll have it. But I'll be watching. Real change starts at the top." As the meeting ended, Elise and her team stepped back into the terminal.
The atmosphere had shifted. Passengers who jeered now avoided her gaze.
Others approached, offering quiet thanks. A young black woman, tears in her eyes, said, "I've been through what you went through. Thank you for speaking up."
Elise squeezed her hand.
"We're changing this together." Media cameras followed her every move, reporters shouting questions. "Miss Washington, will you sue Sky Globe? What's next for the airline?"
Elise ignored them, her focus on the gate where it all began. The Sky Globe logo still hung, but it felt like relics of a dying era. Outside the lounge, Officer Taylor nodded as she passed.
"You did good, Miss Washington."
She gave a small smile.
"We're not done yet." Back in the terminal, the PA system announced updates. Sky Globe flights remained grounded, passengers would be rebooked on other airlines.
The crowd's anger turned to resignation, but for some, there was a new energy, hope. Elise's words had sparked something bigger than Gate 37B. Social media posts from passengers shared their own stories of bias, tagging #SkyGlobeReckoning.
The movement was growing.
Elise's phone buzzed.
"Marcus again. The board meeting's making waves. Our stock's up 8%. Sky Globe's down 20%.
And Singapore Airlines is thrilled with our recommendation."
Elise allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. "Good. Keep pushing Plan Delta. And get me on the next flight to Singapore. First class."
As she headed to a new gate, her team in step, Elise felt the weight of the day.
She'd been humiliated, targeted, dismissed.
But she'd turned their prejudice into a weapon, exposing a rotten system to the world.
Bradley Winters thought he could erase her. Instead, she was rewriting his airline's future and the industry's. The battle wasn't over. Sky Globe's board had made promises, but promises were cheap. Elise knew rail change required pressure, and she had the power to apply it. As she boarded her new flight, the terminal screens flashed another update: Sky Globe board suspends CEO Bradley Winters amid discrimination probe. The reckoning was just beginning. Elise Washington settled into her first-class seat on a Singapore Airlines flight, the hum of the jet a brief respite from the storm she'd unleashed. Her phone glowed with updates. Hashtag Sky Globe reckoning was trending globally, with millions sharing her Gate 37B speech. Clips of Bradley Winters' collapse and the passengers' racist outbursts fueled outrage. Sky Globe's stock had cratered, down 25% in a day. Nexus Technologies, meanwhile, soared, its investors buoyed by Elise's decisive leadership. She opened her laptop, reviewing emails from her team. Marcus reported that Sky Globe's board was scrambling, their emergency measures suspending Bradley, grounding flights, failing to stem the financial bleeding. Her legal team had sent their full report to the board's new committee, detailing years of discriminatory practices. Her PR team was fielding media requests from CNN to BBC, each wanting an exclusive. Elise typed a quick reply: "No interviews yet. Let the evidence speak." The flight attendant offered her a glass of champagne, her smile genuine. "Miss Washington, it's an honor to have you on board." Elise nodded, the contrast to LaGuardia stark. She sipped the drink, her mind already in Singapore. The $500 million investment was critical, but the Aerosphere Airways acquisition was the real prize. Buying Sky Globe's rival would cement Nexus's dominance in global tech and transportation. Sky Globe's failure had cleared the path. Back at LaGuardia, the terminal was a ghost town. Sky Globe's counters stood empty, their kiosks dark. Passengers had been rerouted, but anger lingered. Social media buzzed with stories of bias on Sky Globe flights: families split, passengers profiled, employees silenced. A viral thread from a former Sky Globe flight attendant detailed orders to prioritize certain passengers for upgrades, with certain meaning white. The hashtag Sky Globe reckoning grew into a movement, with calls for boycotts and federal investigations. In New York Presbyterian Hospital, Bradley Winters watched the news from his bed, his face gaunt. The TV showed Sky Globe's grounded fleet, planes towed to remote stands like relics. A nurse reported he'd muttered, "She was right," while staring at the screen. Whether he meant Elise or someone else, no one knew. He declined visitors, even his family, as if grappling with the wreckage of his legacy alone. The airline industry reeled. United announced a review of its customer service. Delta formed an anti-discrimination oversight board. American mandated bias training. Aviation analyst Maria Chen told CNBC, "This is a reckoning." Sky Globe's collapse is forcing every carrier to face their own practices. Elise Washington didn't just expose one airline, she's rewriting the rules. 3 days after Gate 37B, Elise stepped off the plane in Singapore, greeted by a delegation from the Global Tech Innovation Summit. Her keynote was the event's centerpiece, now amplified by the Sky Globe scandal. The audience, tech moguls, investors, policymakers, gave her a standing ovation before she spoke. She took the stage, her presence commanding, and delivered a speech that wove her LaGuardia experience into a call for systemic change. "Discrimination isn't just a moral failure," she said. "It's a business death sentence. Build inclusivity, or you'll be left behind." The Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund signed the $500 million deal that night, impressed by her vision and resolve. Aerosphere Airways CEO met her privately, finalizing terms for Nexus's acquisition. "You've turned Sky Globe's loss into our gain," he said. Elise smiled faintly. "They did that themselves." Back in the US, Sky Globe's board faced mounting pressure. The Department of Transportation launched an investigation, citing Elise's evidence. Shareholders filed lawsuits, alleging mismanagement. The board's independent committee, now armed with Nexus's report, uncovered damning details. Bradley had vetoed diversity training, citing cost inefficiencies. Managers were incentivized to flag suspicious passengers, a term left deliberately vague. Complaints from minority passengers were routinely dismissed as exaggerated. The committee's preliminary findings, leaked to the press, sparked renewed outrage.
A week after LaGuardia, Sky Globe's board held a press conference in Manhattan's Grand Ballroom. Dr. Janet Rivera, the interim chair and the first Latina in such a role at a major airline, faced a sea of reporters.
Sky Globe Airlines will suspend all operations indefinitely, she announced, her voice unwavering.
Our issues are structural, embedded in our culture. We're tearing down the foundation to rebuild. The decision shocked the industry. 250 planes grounded, 21,000 employees on paid leave, $35 million in daily losses. No airline of Sky Globe's size had ever halted voluntarily. Rivera continued, discrimination was not a glitch, it was policy. We're committed to change, and we're starting from zero. She acknowledged Elisa's role, calling her a catalyst for truth.
The cameras panned to board members, their faces grim. Many had resisted the shutdown, but the audit's findings, combined with Elisa's stock leverage and public pressure, left no choice. Meredith Thompson, the gate agent who'd first denied Elise, gave a tearful CNN interview.
I didn't see it, she said, her voice breaking.
We were told to scrutinize certain passengers for security.
It was coded, but I should have questioned it. She joined the committee, vowing to help reform Sky Globe. I can't undo what I did to Miss Washington, but I can make sure it stops. The ripple effects grew. The Department of Transportation issued new rules requiring airlines to track passenger treatment by race and gender. Industry groups launched equity certifications. Insurers offered lower rates to airlines with robust anti-bias policies. At LaGuardia, Gate 37B was under construction, its Sky Globe signage gone.
A teaser sign read, "Coming soon, a new way to fly." Workers installed prayer rooms, multilingual signs, and inclusive artwork, signaling a shift.
Elise monitored it all from Singapore, her team feeding her updates.
Marcus called during a break. Sky Globe's board wants your input on their reforms.
They're desperate to regain credibility.
Elisa's eyes narrowed. They don't get a pass.
I'll share data, but they need to prove change, not promise it. She hung up, her focus back on Nexus's next moves. The passengers who jeered Elise faced their own reckoning.
Social media identified them, their racist comments looping online.
The man who'd shouted, "Fly with your own kind," lost his job after his employer saw the video. Others issued public apologies, claiming they'd been caught up in the moment. The internet wasn't forgiving, their names tied to #SkyGlobeReckoning's infamy. Elisa's inbox overflowed with messages, support from strangers, stories from others who'd faced airline bias, requests to lead diversity initiatives.
A young coder wrote, "I'm black, and you're why I'm studying tech. Thank you for fighting."
Elise saved that one, a reminder of why she'd stood her ground. As she prepared for her return flight, Elise reflected on Gate 37B.
She'd been humiliated, her dignity targeted.
But she'd turned their prejudice into a weapon, exposing a broken system. Sky Globe was crumbling, and the industry was waking up. She'd won this battle, but the war for justice was far from over. She boarded her flight, ready to keep pushing. Elise Washington stepped off her flight back to New York, the weight of Singapore's triumphs, a $500 million investment secured, Aerosphere Airways acquired, balanced by the fire still burning from LaGuardia. Her phone buzzed with updates. Sky Globe's suspension dominated headlines, their grounded fleet a symbol of an industry forced to face its sins.
#SkyGlobeReckoning had morphed into a global call for accountability, with passengers worldwide sharing stories of airline discrimination.
Elisa's stand at Gate 37B had ignited a revolution. At JFK, the Sky Globe terminal was a shadow of its former self. Empty check-in counters, silent kiosks, and a single maintenance worker tending to idle planes painted a stark picture. The financial toll was catastrophic, $35 million daily losses, with no end in sight. Yet, the board's decision to halt operations had earned reluctant respect from analysts. Sky Globe's burning cash to save its soul, Maria Chen told Bloomberg.
It's a gamble, but it might just work.
Elisa's team met her at the airport, Samantha handing her a tablet with the latest. The Department of Transportation's new regulations, inspired by her evidence, mandated airlines to report passenger treatment data by race and gender. United, Delta, and American had rolled out reforms, fearing their own reckoning.
Gate 37B's renovation was nearly complete, its new design a testament to inclusivity.
Most striking, Skyglobe's board had named Dr. Janet Rivera as interim CEO, bypassing internal candidates to signal real change.
Marcus pulled her aside. The board's begging for your guidance. They want you on the reform committee.
Elise's eyes hardened.
They don't get to lean on me to clean their mess.
I'll share data, but they prove their commitment first.
Marcus nodded. Fair. Also, your keynote's gone viral. Nexus stock's up 12%. You're not just a CEO, you're a movement. She allowed a small smile.
The Singapore speech had resonated, her call for inclusive business sparking debates in boardrooms and classrooms. But the personal cost lingered. Gate 37B had been a public victory, private pain.
The memory of Meredith's sneer, Richard's lies, Bradley's smug don't know their place still stung.
She'd turned their prejudice into power, but the scars remained. 6 months later, Skyglobe returned to the skies. Their first flight, New York to Singapore, was a deliberate nod to Elise's journey.
Captain Diane Rodriguez, the airline's first Latina chief pilot, commanded the plane.
Michael Chen, a former employee who'd sued Skyglobe for discrimination, served as lead flight attendant, reinstated under new leadership. The flight carried reporters, activists, and passengers who'd shared their stories during #SkyglobeReckoning.
At takeoff, Diane's voice crackled over the PA, "Welcome aboard. This is a new Skyglobe, built for everyone."
The airline's relaunch was meticulous.
New policies mandated equal treatment, with strict penalties for bias.
Diversity training was embedded in every role, from gate agents to executives.
An independent oversight board, including former passengers who'd faced discrimination, monitored compliance.
The revamped Gate 37B, now a model for accessibility and inclusion, featured a plaque, in honor of those who demanded justice, starting here. Dr. Rivera addressed the press at the relaunch.
Skyglobe's past was broken. We've rebuilt from the ground up, guided by truth and accountability. We thank Elise Washington for holding us to a higher standard.
The cameras panned to a crowd of employees, including Meredith Thompson, who'd become a vocal advocate for reform. "I was part of the problem," she told reporters.
"Now I'm part of the solution." Bradley Winters never returned to aviation.
Sources reported he'd retreated to a quiet life, volunteering with minority youth programs, an unexpected turn for a man defined by exclusion. At New York Presbyterian, recovering from his stress-induced collapse, he'd watched Skyglobe's relaunch in silence. A nurse overheard him say, "I lost it all, but she earned it." Whether he meant Elise or the broader fight, no one knew.
The industry transformed in Skyglobe's wake.
Certification programs for equitable service became standard.
Insurers rewarded airlines with strong anti-bias records.
Passengers, empowered by #SkyglobeReckoning, demanded transparency, their voices amplified by social media. The Department of Transportation's data revealed persistent gaps, but progress was undeniable: fewer random screenings, fairer boarding, more diverse crews.
Elise watched from her Nexus office, now overseeing Aerosphere's integration. Her acquisition had reshaped the Asian market, positioning Nexus as a titan in tech and travel.
She declined Skyglobe's committee offer but shared her team's full report, ensuring their reforms had teeth. When Dr. Rivera sent a personal thank you, Elise replied, "Show me results, not gratitude."
The movement she'd sparked grew beyond airlines.
Tech firms, retailers, and banks launched diversity audits, citing her influence. A young coder's letter sat framed on her desk: "You showed me I can fight and win." It grounded her, a reminder of the stakes. She'd faced Gate 37B's humiliation alone, but her stand had lifted countless others.
One evening, Elise visited the new Gate 37B.
The inclusive design, prayer rooms, clear signage, vibrant artwork felt like a quiet victory. A janitor, an older black man, recognized her. "You changed this place, Miss Washington."
"My daughter flies without fear now."
Elise shook his hand.
"We did it together."
As she left, her phone buzzed: a message from Marcus.
"Skyglobe stock is climbing. Their reforms are working. You rewrote history. Elise didn't reply. History wasn't her goal, justice was. She'd exposed a rotten system, forced an industry to bend, and built a legacy that would outlast her. Gate 37B was no longer a battleground, it was a beacon. And Elise Washington, once denied her rightful seat, had claimed her place at the top.